Well, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Moda Center. I haven't been up here before. No, maybe I was here once. It's nice to see you all. I'll just make some opening comments. Thank you for being here for the Oregon Business Summit. I've been to this summit many years in the past. Really great attendance today, and I think that's partially with the focus on the Portland Central City Task Force recommendations, obviously a large part of the summit's programming this morning. So what I would say out of the gate is I really like the energy in the room. The feedback we're getting on the recommendations as people feel they are concrete, they are focused, the alignment between the city, the county, and the state has been well received. And what I'm focusing on now is making sure we can stay the course on the recommendations. And as you know, there are a lot of recommendations. But part of my job with me and co-chair Dan McMillan was to take all of the ideas, prioritize of what we can focus on in the first half of 2024. And that's what you see in the top 10 recommendations, from the fentanyl crisis declaration to the areas around livability, to the areas around that are recommendations and hopes for the 2024 legislative session. All of those things are focused on making progress in the Portland Central City, bringing people together and being aligned. One of the biggest things we heard out of the task force is there's a lot of good things happening, but nothing seems to be coordinated. Well, we're working on that. That's part of the reason for the emergency declaration. So the alignment and the amplification of this work is going to be critical for the next 6 months to show not only the state, but the nation that Portland is turning a corner, and we are focused on results to make this a place where people want to visit and live in, and that's part of the recovery we're focused on. So with that, so to make, since I've been on the stage a lot, Elizabeth's going to call on people just so I don't forget anybody. So.
And it's going to be a test to see if I know your names. Dirt.
You keep talking about alignment today. Do you have concrete buy-in from Portland, the county, maybe Metro, on the tax moratorium or the tax freeze and the emergency? I mean, is this a done deal that these will all be announced shortly?
We have unanimity on going forward on those priority recommendations. You threw in a couple things there. So the tax moratorium. Yes, the three of us have said having that pause to make sure we can, the new taxes that have come on in the last few years, make sure that they're working is a good thing to do. Getting a tax advisory group to look at how our tax structure is working is helpful. And I just want to be really clear, this is a moratorium on new taxes and fees. We have some renewals coming up, things that very much people support. This is about saying to the broader community, including the business community, there's predictability, you understand the lay of the land for the next 3 years. That's what we're committing to.
But Megan Peterson called it provisional today. She seemed to be saying we're just kind of wrapping our arms around some of this stuff, and this should be seen as provisional, which didn't strike me as this should be seen as I'm absolutely about to sign a emergency for the next 90 days.
Well, you can ask her about her use of the term there. In our conversations, the mayor, the chair, and I together, we understand there's a lot of work to do. Getting into the details is our very next meeting. We've been meeting every other week since the beginning of the year. We have another meeting next week. We're going to be specifically going into what's the timing of the fentanyl emergency declaration for the state, the city, and the county. How do we all do that in alignment, timing-wise, so when we set up that command center, everybody has the same flexibility that comes along with emergency declaration. That is the type of details is the next steps here. Just because we have a set of recommendations doesn't mean we're just like walking away. So if that's what you meant by provisional, it's like, yeah, we got work to do yet, and that's our starting point. And we agree on the starting point, for sure.
Blair.
Yeah, my question is on the fentanyl emergency. What does that actually mean, and what does that actually do?
That is a good question. So the value of doing an emergency order, whether it's the state, the city, or the county, but in this case, all three, is it allows us to focus existing resources. So an emergency order gives you flexibility to reassign staff, to reassign existing dollars that could be in a different program. Say, we need to do these things. Without an emergency order, you have to go through your regular processes. This creates an urgency. It allows us to bring those dollars and those staff together in addition to what's already happening. I very much envision a place where there are good things happening, but they need to be in the same room every single day, having a conversation both on the public health side and the public safety side, so we can see more progress on the central city streets.
Emily?
Governor, this proposal for a public use ban, would this recriminalize drug use in public?
What we found from Measure 110 was there was an unintended consequence of lack of clarity on what it means for public use. But right now, we don't allow the public use of alcohol, and I don't think we should allow the public use of drugs either.
Do you support repealing Measure 110?
At this point, I'm waiting to see what the legislature comes up with. And that was not a conversation for the task force per se. Everyone said, what can we do to improve what's happening in Central City right now? And the two things they came up with were banning public use and making it easier for law enforcement to prosecute because of the recent court decision in Hubble. And that is really important because we don't want people using it on the streets and we don't want people selling. So those were the top priorities coming out of the task force.
So in your conversations with the legislature, do they support this public use ban?
I think there's growing interest in making that happen. That is why the Joint Committee on the Addiction Crisis and Community Safety is critical to this work. That's why Senator Lieber was a co-chair on our Community Safety Committee, because she is also co-chairing the Joint Legislative Committee. We wanted to have that alignment, so we were all moving in the same direction. My expectation is that will happen, but it is up to the legislature. But I think there's a lot of movement from today's conversation to make that happen.
And finally, some people want to know why this move wasn't made a year ago. I mean, the data shows how much worse the drug addiction has become in Portland. Why now? Why not a year ago when we had those numbers?
I think it's important for all of us to recognize how fentanyl has just changed the entire landscape of how we respond to things. And it's taken a while, I think, for everyone to kind of sit with that and understand what that means. During the 23 legislative session, there was a lot going on. I think maybe it would have come up if we hadn't dealt with a long walkout by Republican leaders. Regardless, it is something that the Joint Committee is focusing on for 2024, and I've been public for months that I support that. I think that's a public health and a public safety issue, and we don't need that on our streets.
Julia?
Yeah, with the public use ban, what kind of teeth will there be for this? Are we just telling people you can't do that, or is there a way to actually stop people using fentanyl?
Well, one of the things that you see in the task force recommendations is a recognition that we need to be ready if the landscape changes. For example, if law enforcement will be allowed to cite people for public use, we need to be ready for what that means. So that's part of the declaration around the fentanyl crisis, making sure that we have better coordination with the existing resources, building better relationships with folks who are using on the streets, with existing outreach workers, existing peer support workers. So when what we think is going to happen does happen, which is you're not able to use outside anymore, there will be a point where people understand, oh, well, maybe I need to get into recovery and maybe I need to get into treatment. It is going to be, I think, a moment to get folks on a different path. So we better be ready for that. Let's, trying to figure out if we can get more treatment out there, making sure people have the relationships that they're ready to change their lives if they, aren't allowed to be using outside. So it's kind of it's a phasing issue in my head that we have to be ready for what we think is coming.
So the Fix Measure 110 Coalition responded to you putting out your recommendations, saying that we still haven't gone far enough in mandating treatment. Now you said we need more treatment available, but it's still the understanding of the task force that treatment, drug addiction treatment, will be optional for people the way it has been since Measure 110 passed.
I haven't seen their statement. Here's what I would say. Since I came into office, I'm very much focused on the health care that is needed for people who have a health issue. Addiction is a healthcare issue. We will be soon seeing a set of recommendations around mapping existing capacity for residential. So making sure the existing dollars we have are going to fill those needs. The session is coming up. I fully expect we'll have some conversation about additional resources to fill in some gaps. I think it remains to be seen what those are. I want to make sure when the legislature allocates more money, we know exactly how it's being spent and how it's improving the system. That also means strategic use of the Measure 110 dollars that are out there that are filling in the gaps. We're already seeing more recovery beds coming online because of 110. I want to keep that momentum up because have people who need more help, and we need to be prepared for that.
Shane.
I got her.
Hello.
So we've got your list of top recommendations. You say we have alignment with various leaders and stakeholders on these, and we have a timeline. Can you talk a little bit about what success will look for you 6 months from now? How are we going to measure whether or not these recommendations are actually going to lead to meaningful outcomes?
Well, one of the reasons that you see the 10 recommendations you do today is we asked really hard questions of our committee members, who, by the way, did an incredible amount of work in 4 months. We're like, okay, well, what's the what, when, where, how on these? So we believe we've picked 10 recommendations that we will be able to quantify how things are different. But I'll be honest, today we needed to get to this day before we can get to describing the progress. We want to make sure we can show the progress and explain to the public that there's progress. But I can't tell you what that is today, but I think, well, for example, if the legislature passes a ban on public use, that's a result. But we won't know that till the end of February.
What would you like downtown Portland and the central city to look like someday?
Well, I want it to be a place where people feel more comfortable being. And that is showing, are we going to have every problem solved in 6 months? I'm not saying that. I can't say that. I won't say that. What I will say is we'll have continued police presence. I think we will see less of the types of activities that are frankly discouraging people from being in the downtown core. Hopefully, as we've hoped for in the Vision Committee, rare sightings of public use. That is going to be huge for folks. We are going to continue to have the work from our OSP troopers working with Portland Police. We've talked about additional park rangers. Again, more trained adults on the streets of Portland is going to make everyone feel more comfortable. So 6 months from now, when it's Rose Festival-ish, people are going to see less plywood. They're going to feel more comfortable being on the city streets. And we're going to continue to build on that.
I don't know your name.
My name's Ezra.
Hey, Ezra.
Hi. So you were talking about reducing the barriers to prosecuting drug delivery. I've spoken to folks on both sides of the issue. It seems like there's a lot of momentum going towards just writing, basically fully back into the law and going over the state Supreme Court's head and saying, what you said, it doesn't fit into the law, we'll change the law so it fits into that. The defense attorneys say that this is wrapping up users who are dealing into delivery prosecutions. So I guess I'm just curious, as you're looking at reducing these barriers to prosecuting drug delivery, how are you still making sure that treatment is available and that people who are actually just dealing to support an addiction are not getting wrapped up in what is framed as going after big-time drug dealers?
I think we have to pay attention to what law enforcement is doing. This isn't about going after low-level users. This is about going after the folks who are selling. My understanding, and I'm not a lawyer, is that if we make some changes in response to the Supreme Court decision, we'll be able to have more success in prosecution. Well, I think what you're seeing now with the multi-jurisdictional approach on dealing with the dealers, the folks who are selling, and the manufacturers, is a very coordinated effort to say that business is not acceptable here in the state of Oregon. You're seeing a lot more busts. You're seeing a lot more large amounts of fentanyl, for example, being confiscated. That's what we need to keep on doing. If we're just arresting a bunch of folks who are low-level individuals, that is not going to solve our problem. So holding law enforcement accountable to say our goal is the big guys, not focus on the little guys. So that's my hope. That would be my expectation. So.
Lisa.
Governor, there was, brief mention of the sobering center and funding for that. Counties dragged its feet on providing the funds for that. Would you step in and say, fine, I'll give you state money, just get it done?
Well, one of the recommendations is to expedite, getting to that sobering center. I'm not prepared to answer one way or the other. I know they're moving forward with a plan, not just studying it. And the legislative session is coming up. So if the county has an ask to expedite this, I want to know what it is. I have not heard anything specifically from them.
Do you want it done?
I think we have other communities who have figured out to provide that system of services from sobering to stabilization. We should be doing it in Multnomah County. So as the state, we're going to encourage that, and if there's a role for us to play, I am definitely open to that.
And Ezra had a follow-up to
Yeah,
this.
just separately, with the announcement that the JOHS, the agreement between Multnomah County and Portland is going to go forward, is now going to be solidified with a new agreement. What has the task force, this is, I guess, going on simultaneously with the task force, has there been any discussion between the folks from JOHS and the task force? Is there collaboration there? What's the expectation moving forward for working with JOHS?
One of the things that was key when we set up the task force is that the committee that was looking on homelessness services and housing was not recreating the wheel. So that's why Chair Vega Peterson was the chair of that committee. Very much aligned with what you're seeing with the new framework on the intergovernmental agreement and the joint office. There's no daylight there. Those are the same things moving forward. Even though the IGA wasn't a specific product of the task force, I think the environment over the last 4 months helped them get to where they are now. And I'm super supportive of where they are. I like the governance structure they're trying to set up, the additional metrics that they're adding in. That's very much in the spirit of the task force. So again, no daylight there. We're all working in the same direction.
And were you involved in that IGA in crafting that?
I was not.
Connor.
So back to the emergency declaration order, you have the leaders of all 3 levels of government in the state on stage talking about this. Kind of begs the question, why not make that declaration today?
Well, my experience of doing these things, they take a couple weeks from a legal standpoint to make sure you do the legal work right and make sure everybody is on the same page of what we're trying to achieve. I've been meeting every other week with the mayor and chair since January. So I have a meeting next week. That's number 1 topic of conversation. Okay, what do we do to make this legally happen as soon as possible? So it might take a couple weeks, but we're going to expedite it as fast as we can.
Dick Hughes.
Thank you. Governor, I'd be interested in your response to the keynote address today from Gary Thompson, kind of challenge liberals and progressives. How do you get people to buy into that if you agree with it? Because a land use bill that failed in the final hours of the 2023 session, in my mind, sort of represents people not buying into what he was saying.
Well, I do think the dynamics at the end of the session were particularly unique because we were coming off a walkout. And by the way, we're making great progress on making sure folks from different perspectives are coming together on the housing production package. I will confess I did not hear I will go watch Derek's keynote. I was driving here. But what I will say is, I don't think it's about being progressive or conservative or whatever. I think this is about, can you make stuff work? Since I became governor, it was about, let's improve customer service. How is this working for people? You know, I am very progressive when it comes to public policy, but I am pragmatic and I'm tired of things not working. So maybe where I align most with Derek is, yeah, it's not okay to just have a big idea, you actually have to make it work, and that's what we're focusing on.
All right, Dirk.
I just wanted to ask another alignment question. We've talked a lot about commitments from governments. I've not heard a lot about commitments from business. I mean, I didn't hear anything about businesses committed to bringing people back downtown, a suggestion to do that, or take plywood off, or convert their buildings into housing, which is something we talked a lot about at the beginning of the process. What specific commitments do you, I heard Tim Boyle saying he's going to give somebody a note out, I guess, but what specific commitments did you get from these folks?
The whole process of this task force was a commitment from business. I just want to be upfront. When I agreed to do this with Dan, I said, who's going to support us to do this work? You don't bring hundreds of people together in 4 months and get to where we are today. So people came with resources for facilitators. They brought in Eco Northwest. We had a space for everybody to meet in. You have Wyden and Kenny doing an advertising campaign in coordination with this. That is a starting point. I fully expect early next year, probably next month, I will be asking some hard questions of the business community. Okay, now what's next? Who is contributing to tell the story, to help us with the coordination center? We need to be doing what Travel Portland is planning to do, which is to try to repair the reputation of Portland, because we want people to visit, right? That's going to take everyone. The one piece that was very, at my closing remarks this morning, people have to do something. And I'm going to be asking them, what are you doing? Are you supporting that coffee shop in your building who's going to go out of business because your people aren't there? Are you volunteering? Are your folks going to go out and pick up trash? Are you talking to your national networks who are saying, I wonder when our next convention should be, and saying, you should come to Portland because Portland is changing and Portland is the place you want to be. It's more soft than those really hard things. It's everybody saying and being positive about where Portland is. And I'll be very frank, people should stop paying for billboards that trash our city and actually talk about how the city is coming around.
Including Tim Boyle, he paid for.
Well, I think Tim Boyle is going to spend his money differently. So,
One more question. Sammy, we haven't heard from you.
Governor Kotek, I'm sorry to get off topic, but what is your reaction to the news reporting that PPS Superintendent Guerrero is resigning?
Honestly, I was surprised. I was not anticipating that. We haven't been able to connect. I left him a message. The Superintendent Guerrero's commitment to the district has been really a positive for stability. I mean, I don't know if many of you, I don't know how long you've lived here, but there's been quite a few superintendents at PPS. For him to be there 6.5 years to create some stability and some structure for change, I think has been really important. I also understand from a personal standpoint why he might want a break. He led through a pandemic, he led through a contentious teacher strike. Maybe he just needs a break. So that made sense to me on a personal level. I think the question now for the district is, well, what's going to happen in February? They need new leadership. I have not had any conversations with anybody about that.
Okay.
Thank you all. Appreciate it. What's that? Adjourned? Okay.
Adjourned.
I've been here a lot today, so I appreciate the time. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.